Awesome, we're
And
live, eh, Arjun?
we are live, guys.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. What is up, guys? I hope you guys are super keen. I saw we had a couple of people waiting.
Yep, yeah.
Awesome. What's up, guys? We are live.
Morning, guys. Afternoon. It looks like everyone's like playing music.
Good afternoon, good morning. Awesome, guys. Shout out to Adwait, Stephanie, Shane, Hernan, Rockin' K, Johnny Dip. What's up, guys? It's so good to have you here. We're just going to wait for about good morning. And we'll start soon, guys. We're super keen to be here. That's right, Gaurav. Skyla is actually in charge of the music here. Shout out Skyla. People are, complimenting your music. Great stuff.
Hey, wonderful. Glad to hear.
That's right, Shane. The video will stay on YouTube. So even after we're done with the session, you guys can always go back and review some of the stuff that we've done. So Alice, the workshop is actually 1.5 hours long. So I mean, if you have to step out, that's totally fine. You can always just watch that. And also, Harjot and I will drop our socials and our email addresses. So if you guys have any questions, then feel free to reach out to us. What's up, Juanita? I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
Yeah, we have also.
Awesome. Hello, Nikita. Awesome. We are super excited as well. Good morning, Aileen. Jaden, what's up, Jaden? It's good to see you here, man. Long time no see.
Guys, we'll start in the next 6 minutes. wait for everyone to join.
Yeah. Connor is loving the music, Skyla. Shout out to Skyla, guys. Skyla is in charge of the music. James is asking, can I ask how we need to set up the starting code? So guys, if you head over to this link, I'm just gonna put the link here right now. What you can do is you can head over to this link and you'll see a link to a GitHub repository. So you'll see a GitHub link. Just click on that, open that GitHub link in a new tab, and you can just click on download the code. And that should be good enough to start off. Awesome, Antonio. Yeah, we also love web dev. Awesome. Great, good. Awesome, guys. I think, Harjot, do you want to get started?
Yeah, I think we can get started. Now we're right now. So we can start. Akhil, do you want to share your screen?
Sure thing. Thank you so much, Skyla, for the awesome music. Guys, we are going to get started now. I am going to go into present mode. Great.
Wait.
Right. So James is saying he has zero experience, and I hope the prerequisite knowledge needed is not too high. No, there is no prerequisite knowledge required for this. I mean, as long as you're able to navigate a computer, you should be good to go over here. Awesome. Welcome, Flood Genius. Awesome. Super keen for this, guys. So yeah, guys, we are Zio, and we help people kickstart their careers. Okay. So I'm super excited to be here with you guys today, and we'll be covering the intro to web development, where we'll understand the basics. And today we'll specifically be focusing on the basics of HTML and CSS while building the Netflix landing page. So what makes us unique actually is our project-driven approach to teaching concepts. So hopefully, our unique style of focusing on building the Netflix landing page is going to make a lot of concepts stick with you guys. All right. Great. So yeah, guys, let's do a couple of introductions. I think let Harjot and I start off so that people can know who we are, and then we can jump into introductions of the DSC leads. So basically, guys, I'm Akhil. I'm from Zio. I was born and brought up. I was born in India, Hyderabad. I was brought up in Nairobi, Kenya, and I pursued my undergrad in computer science and information systems at the University of Cape Town. And that's where I met Harjot, and that's how we ended up starting Zio. And yeah, I guess Harjot, you want to intro yourself?
100%. So my name is Harjot Singh. For those who cannot pronounce my name properly, I'm actually from Malawi, Blantyre, Malawi, and I was born and brought up in Malawi, moved to Cape Town to study at the University of Cape Town, where I graduated in electrical and computer engineering, and right now I'm back in Malawi because of this whole lockdown. So yeah, that's me. And that's where I met Akhil. I actually met Akhil first day at university. We actually did computer science assignments together, and then somehow ended up running this Zio business together.
Awesome. Yeah, guys, we've also dropped our socials there. Let's connect on Instagram. It's always nice to grow the network and get to know people, who are in different parts of the world. So I'll be super keen to connect with you guys. And I guess, yeah, we can start with the introductions of the DSC leads. So, I mean, we have a couple of DSC leads right now on the Zoom chat with us. So let's start off with UBC. Gagan, is Gagan here? Or I think he might have stepped out. All right, let's just go on to University of Ottawa.
Hey everyone, I'm Skyla. I'm the DSC lead for U Ottawa. I'm currently a third-year software engineering student and a current co-op student at BlackBerry. I'm here with my learning and development lead, Ali. So if you want to introduce yourself quickly.
Hey, I'm Ali. I'm also a learning development lead at U Ottawa. I'm also in third year software engineering. And yeah, I'm looking forward to this exciting workshop with you all.
Yeah,
Awesome.
for sure.
Awesome. And we actually did a workshop already with Mount St. Antonio College last week. They'll be joining us for workshop 2 in the coming week, so that should be fun. Also, like just a pointer, like the people from UC Davis and FAU are having a few issues right now, but I think people from their communities are joining. So welcome, guys, and let's ask University of Virginia Tech to intro.
Hi everyone, I'm Samya. I'm the current DSC lead for Virginia Tech. I'm a third year computer science student and I'm excited. I hope you guys enjoy this workshop as much as we do.
Epic, epic. And we also have Lejay from Benedict College.
Hey guys, wonderful to meet you. My name is Ledger Lawrence and I'm studying computer science here at Benedict College. I'm also the lead for the DSC chapter here at Benedict College and I'm a sophomore. Can't wait to let you guys see what we have in store for you. All right.
Epic, epic, epic. And we have Anudit from California State University, Long Beach.
Hi guys, I'm Anudit, the DSC lead from Cal State Long Beach. I'm a final year graduate student and I'm super excited for the workshop. So let's do it.
Yeah, let's do this stuff, guys. This is going to be epic. This is going to be super epic, right?
Yeah.
So we have a simple agenda. We're going to do some housekeeping. Let's inform you guys about how the 4 workshops are going to happen. Then we'll dive into the building blocks of the web. If like you guys have to understand what's happening under the hood when you log on to YouTube for the live stream, what is actually happening under the hood. And then we'll also talk through the basics of HTML and the CSS basics. And we'll also carry on into the next workshop. Awesome. Yeah, CSULB, go beach. Awesome, guys, welcome. Awesome, loving the energy, loving the energy. Awesome, guys. And yeah, we're going to close off and talk through the next steps for the coming workshops, right? So I guess let's start off by talking a little bit, doing some housekeeping. So we'll talk a little bit about Zayo and the format of this workshop. So for those of you who are not familiar with Zayo, essentially Zayo identifies high potential talent, makes them industry to help them get a high paying job eventually. So that's what we do as a company. We're actually based in South Africa, Cape Town. And right now we're just building our brand, just going to different campuses all over the world, just giving these workshops, educating people. And that's pretty much what Zayo does. So we have these training programs primarily focusing on web right now. So please feel free to check out zayo.io to learn more about us. Or you can also connect with us on Instagram, see what we're up to. And yeah, it's going to be nice to connect with you guys. So yeah, the format of the workshop, so we expect you guys to code along. So if you guys have any questions while you're coding along, please feel free to let us know. That's one of the benefits of doing this whole thing live, right? And you can download the starter code from apply.zayo.io/events, right? So let me actually open that up for you guys. So this is what the page looks like. And you'll be able to see that we have this intro to HTML CSS, building Netflix and Facebook. And you can check, if you can click on that, you'll be able to see that these are the assets. So you can download the assets by opening this in a tab. Just make sure that you have VS Code installed as well. It's extremely powerful. You don't need VS Code to code HTML, CSS, but it's extremely powerful. We'll dive into the details of that. And then please just ensure that you have the live server extension also installed. That really helps with development, right? So yeah, guys, we want these workshops to be engaging. So if you ever have any questions, please feel free to drop it in the chat and we will address the questions, okay? Awesome, so just a few pointers, guys. Basically, this is a crash course. We'll not be going through every single concept, but we'll equip you with whatever you need to get started, all right? So by the end of this series, you will have built the Netflix landing page clone and a Facebook clone. But we are thinking of changing the Facebook clone and perhaps building a Google-oriented product. So perhaps we'll be building the YouTube clone, which will be interesting because people will be logging on into YouTube to watch the video and we'll be coding up YouTube. So that should be super fun. Because we're dealing with the Google Developer Student Cloud, we thought maybe let's make it a Google-oriented product. So we'll basically focus the first 2 workshops on building the Netflix landing page, and the last 2 workshops will be focused on building the YouTube clone, for example. So we'll finalize that. Just let us know in the chat what you would prefer to build, something Google oriented. We're thinking YouTube. Just let us know in the chat if you're keen to build YouTube. That'll be nice to hear some engagement on that. Yeah, and basically you will learn what's needed to build a landing page and an actual business, right? $1 billion businesses, whether it's YouTube or Facebook, just with HTML and CSS. So with just the basics, you'll be able to build amazing UIs, and you'll be able to carry on in the future and build, learn JavaScript to build fully functional applications. So Shane is asking, where would you recommend downloading the VS Code? So just head over to apply.zio.io, and you'll find a link, exact link of where you can download it from. So just a pointer as well. Yeah, Matthew, I think I'm hearing YouTube there. Awesome. So we'll probably go with YouTube maybe. And yeah, just one more pointer. HTML and CSS are quite linked. So you will find us mixing between the 2 often, right? So we just want to put this out there. They hand in hand. So it's important to know that teaching one thing and then out of nowhere we're just going to also introduce CSS while we're doing HTML, right? So just be on the lookout for that. And also one of the things that we believe is #ABCD, anybody can dev. Okay, so if we can do it, guys, you guys can do it. Rocking K. No, this is not a reference to that movie, but it just has a different meaning here. So awesome, let's do this. Harjot, is there anything else you want to add before we continue?
We've covered everything, and let's just get started, man. Like, I've been waiting. Get started.
Awesome, guys. Let's get started with this, right? So let's start off by talking about the building blocks. So there's something you need to know. The building blocks of the web is powered with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So there's HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And what HTML stands for is hypertext markup language. So hypertext meaning that it's basically, it was based on links initially. Markup means that you type it in a certain way in your code editor, and then the browser understands it based on how you type it. So the markup, meaning we'll use different tags, and that's what the markup means. And language, of course, means it's HTML. That is the syntax, right? So all the content on websites. So anytime you load any website, when you open YouTube, right, all the content starts off in HTML. So HTML is where any web app begins, right? And the best part about HTML, it's super, super easy. It's the best for beginners to enter the world of programming. So if you're ever feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling so curious, if you're afraid to get started with web development, the lowest hanging fruit for you is HTML. It's super easy to get started, right? So CSS basically stands for the cascading style sheets. And the job of CSS is the look and feel of a site, right? So with HTML, we'll mainly be focusing on building elements, building a header, building a footer, building headings, paragraphs. Whereas with CSS, we're going to bring the look and feel to the site, right? So think of it like with the human body analogy, right? So if you're walking naked, that's like HTML, because HTML is just like the bare bones structure, right? Then if you wear some really cool clothes, you want to look attractive, you wear an awesome suit, awesome dress, it attracts you, it attracts people more. So that's why the CSS is extremely important, because it makes the look and feel of sites look better, and you want users to get attracted to the site, right? So that's basically what CSS does, right? It's like the amazing clothes that you wear, whereas HTML is like the bare bones. Like you can't wear clothes without having a body underneath, right? So basically that's what CSS is. It's all about fonts. You can use beautiful fonts, you can change colors, you can add backgrounds, you can use layouts to structure elements nicely, and there's a whole lot more. You can do animations, and there's so many things you can do with CSS, right? Then JavaScript. JavaScript is really important. It is a programming language. I'm sure some of you might have done, maybe Java, C#. If you've done any of those languages, similarly, JavaScript is another language which is mainly used to manipulate HTML and CSS, right? So it's used to basically make apps dynamic. So when you click on an element, you want some dynamic thing to happen. Maybe you want some sort of, some rearranging of elements, right? So that's where JavaScript comes in. And a lot of the frameworks that you'll hear out there, such as React.js, AngularJS, Vue.js, all those applications basically are, they're based on JavaScript. So JavaScript is the underlying language that's used to build those libraries and frameworks, right? So it's extremely, extremely powerful. I love JavaScript. I got a question here. Is it similar to Java or is it totally different? So guys, it's actually totally different from Java, right? The only reason it's called JavaScript is because back in the day, Java was really popular. So to attract people's attention, they called it JavaScript. So, when it's called JavaScript, people are like, okay, there's this new thing, let us check it out, right? So that is the reason why it's called JavaScript, but it's totally, totally different. It's mainly used for the web, right? And unfortunately, it's not going to be covered in this workshop because it is a lot, and we'd like to do that in a whole lot more detail. We do cover this in our training programs, so definitely, feel free to check it out. Check out our programs. Yeah, so honestly, you only need HTML to build any page, right? So let me actually grab the Netflix page over here. So you can see I have Netflix open here. And you can see that if I just disable all the styles, you can see that you have, all the elements are still there. Like you have the logo, you have the background image, you have all these headings, paragraphs, and all this awesome stuff, right?
Imagine if Netflix looked like that, man. Like, would it be that popular?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. I don't think people would enjoy, like, you'd come to this page and you'd be like, actually, I don't want to involve myself with this kind of product, right? So, but CSS is what makes it look interesting. It adds life to the site. It adds an amazing user experience, look and feel, and users will be attracted to the site. Like, look at this aesthetic. You can see there's a nice video effect over here. And as you scroll down, there's a few animations as well. And it's really simple. It looks nice. It looks attractive. And that's the power of CSS. It adds life to the site. It makes the site look really interesting, right? So let's jump into a few basics, right, of HTML to get started, right? So we'll be talking about the basic syntax, a little bit about file structure, headings and paragraphs. These are basically elements in HTML, headings and paragraphs, strong in emphasis, and how to comment code. So yeah, as I said, guys, HTML is extremely simple. And the job of HTML is to tell the browser exactly what we are writing. The browser needs to understand what code is being written so that it can present it, right? So some of the things that we'll be writing is, headings, paragraphs, using bold font, using italics, using a link so that, you can redirect to other pages, open up new pages and new tabs. You can use a nav bar at the top of the page, the footer, the main content. So all this is what HTML does. It's like putting all these elements on the page, right? And the most important thing in HTML is tags, right? Everything is wrapped in something called tags. And that is how the browser understands what we are trying to put on the screen, right? Using tags. So we'll go into more detail with that, but let us look at an analogy, right? So think of a book. A book has a cover, right? So there's a cover page. And then a book has pages, so you can flip through the different pages. And each page has titles, subheadings, paragraphs, page numbers, and other elements, right? Similarly, if we look at this analogy using tags, you can see that we have the opening tag here of cover. We have the closing tag here of cover. So you can see that it's this open angle bracket / the name of the element, and then closing the closing angle bracket. So that's the opening tag, that's the closing tag, and the opening tag and closing tag makes up an element, right? So this becomes a cover element. So the thing is, technically speaking, people use it interchangeably, but the opening tag and closing tag is what makes an element, all right? Then you can see that inside the cover, right, we have the pages. So you can see that inside the cover element, we have the page element that has a page opening tag and a page closing tag, right? So if we continue, this is what the HTML would look like. So you can see that we have the cover, right? And then inside cover, we have the page element. And inside the page element, we have the heading. So COVID happens, that's the heading. Subheading is at the end of the world. Then the P tag, P stands for paragraph. 2020 was great. Then it all started. So this is basically the book analogy. All right. Awesome. Great. So you can see that tags are these angled brackets, and the word like P stands for paragraph, and that is enclosed by these tags, right? And the closing tags have a forward slash, all right? And everything from the opening and closing tag is called an element, all right? So James is saying they are elements that close itself without a separate closing tag. That's correct, James. There's actually the image tag. We'll be diving into that. So the image tag actually doesn't have any elements between. So it's just an opening angled bracket and then a closing, and it's called self-closing. So we'll dive into that. All right. Yeah. So everything from the opening and closing tag is called an element, and elements define our content in the browser. So when we use P like this, the browser understands what we're trying to do. We're trying to put a paragraph on the page. All right. Great. So yeah, I guess let's take this to our code editor. So I hope you guys have your code editors open now. And I have mine open over here. And if you use that GitHub link, you'll have access to this assets folder. All right. So what I'll do now is, firstly, let me zoom in. Great. And what I'll do is I'm going to create a new file, and I'll call it index.html, right? So normally people, like, this is the practice that's used in industry. Index.html is basically where the app begins. So this is like your home page. And if you're using VS Code, let us actually set up this file, right? So if you type exclamation mark and hit enter, you'll see that we'll get a template pop up over here with all the different. Yeah, Seth, you're good to go with brackets. That's totally fine. So all I did right now is I typed the exclamation mark and I hit enter, and you can see that all this template code appears, right? So Rocking K is asking, how do you get that file within the coding window? So what you can do is you can just right click and then you can say new file, and that should create the file for you. Okay, awesome. And you can see that all this bunch of stuff appears, right? So from what we spoke about, you can see that there's this opening tag over here, and that's closing tag over here. So we know that that's the head element, right? So let us dive into details in talking about exactly what these different elements are, but just a few pointers on your file naming, right? So normally I recommend that you guys stick to lowercase for naming files. You don't want to have like capital letters here and there. Or alternatively, if you do use capital letters, please keep it consistent. Just make sure that it's very consistent. Keep the names short, because normally you'll be pointing to other files. You want your names to be short and clear, and have descriptive meanings, you know. So I'm seeing a couple of questions. Let me address the questions. I'm sorry, I meant about the assets from GitHub. So the assets are already there. Like if you download that code, you should have access to assets. So Harjot, maybe you want to just respond to that on the chat. Yeah, cool. So yeah, I'm just going to continue. So you can see that it's important to just have descriptive meanings. You don't want to call your files like page 4 HTML or HTML. Just give it like descriptive names. So if you're building a profile page, you want to call it profile.html, right? You might be surprised, like one of the hardest things to do in programming is like naming variables, naming files. These are things that, like, you know, sometimes can throw you off. And then also recommend you use underscores or hyphens instead of two words merged, right? So you don't want to say about us like this, rather use about-us.html, okay? And yeah, do not put spaces, guys. Do not put spaces when you're naming your files. It becomes difficult to reference, to point to those files. So these are just a few conventions. Recommend that you follow that. And then file organizing, the main folder is the root folder. So you can see that this Netflix DSC over here, that is actually the root folder, okay? When I say root, it means that is where the app begins. How do I know the app begins there? Because I've added my index.html. So index.html is normally in your root folder. Okay, cool. So yeah, so index.html is what's used to name the home or the root file, right? It's in the root folder, not the subfolders. So it's not that it won't work if you put it inside subfolders, right? Like your app will still work, but this is the best practices. So normally if you use frameworks like Angular and React, they enforce these practices. So index.html is normally in the root, right? And you can put pages into subfolders. So you can create a folder and you can add multiple pages to it. And it just makes organizing important. So I really want to stress this point here, guys. Like if you're going to build projects, they can scale, they can become very big very quickly. So you want to make sure that you're organizing your files properly. Otherwise, it can get very confusing when you're programming, right? And normally, for example, you can have an assets folder that has images, right? And you can have subfolders. You can have assets folder, and then you can have different, like depending on what you're doing, you can have different kinds of images, right? Different kinds of folders. Okay. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about the file structure. So over here we used emmet. So if you saw initially, we just typed exclamation mark and we hit enter. So that's using something called emmet on Visual Studio Code, which comes installed already. And you can see that we have these elements. So the first thing you can see here is the doctype.html, right? So let us understand what is doctype.html. Firstly, this is something that's added at the top of every HTML document. And what it's telling the browser, right, is that it's an HTML5 file, right? So if you look at old code, like old HTML documents, you'll see that it's going to be called something else. It'll be called doctype with a whole bunch of numbers sometimes, or it'll be called something else. You know that you're dealing with different versions then. But with just when it says doctype HTML, we know that we're dealing with an HTML5 file, right? So it just tells the browser that, hey, this is an HTML5 file. You can handle it accordingly, okay? Then if I go back to the code, you can see that here we have the HTML tag. So this is the HTML opening tag, and then we have the HTML closing tag. So within that, we have all our code, right? Within that element. So HTML basically tells the browser that only HTML is written in between these tags, right? So this might actually feel redundant, but it'll make sense because sometimes if you want to write JavaScript code, there's a separate tag for that. If you want to write CSS code, there's a separate tag for that, okay? So it basically tells the browser that we'll be writing HTML between here, but it acts as the root to the document, okay? Now, if we continue, we can see, if I go back to the code over here, you can see that we have something called head, right? So there's head and then there's body. So inside head, we have all these meta tags, right? So you can see there's no opening tag and closing tag for meta tags. It's just directly there, right? So we'll dive into details with that, okay? So I got a question, what's the difference between HTML and HTML5? So HTML has been developing, right, for a while. Like people have been making up different versions of it. So it is just HTML5 is just the newest version of HTML, right? So that's the difference. So
Akhil,
if we
sorry, Akhil.
Yeah.
Before you continue, you want to show how to git clone or download the files, the asset files from GitHub? Could you
Sure,
just
sure.
go the entire process, because some people are confused.
Okay, cool. Let me just do that. So if you open the apply.xi.io event page, you can see that we have this assets over here. So if I copy that, then open it in a new tab, you can see that this page appears, right? Now, when this page appears, you'll see a green button with the download icon that says code. So you click on that, and it'll give you all this bunch of options, which you don't have to worry about now. And you can just click on download zip. And if you do that, your code should download. It's really small. You can see it's only 136 KB. And then you can open it up. And once you open it up, you'll see that there's this folder, Netflix LP. So what I'll do is I'm just going to drag it into my VS Code. And you'll have it ready there. So now it'll look the same as what we were working on. So you can see it has assets, and this is what it looks like. Okay, I'm just going to close that because I already have it open. Yeah, you can drag and drop it into VS Code. Alternatively, if you have VS Code, you can just open VS Code and then you can just say open. and then you can find the file that you're looking for and you can open it, the folder you're looking for, okay? Great, awesome. Yeah, guys, please feel free to pop any questions here. So yeah, let's continue doing a little bit of the theory stuff before we get into the exciting stuff. It's important you understand the basics before we jump into the cool stuff where we actually start coding. So the first thing is the head, right? So firstly, when anything that we type into the head tag, head element, right? It actually doesn't appear in your browser, right? In the browser page, nothing appears. So it's kind of like the brain, right? It has all the important information. It kind of controls the page. Like if you want to import like fonts, if you want to link it with the database, we normally put tags, these meta tags, and the website is not going to function as you want it to function if you don't add those meta tags. So the head is extremely important. This is where we add like these important information. So some of the things that you could import are we could be importing styles. So we could be importing styles from our project or from like some external files that are on the web. Alternatively, we could be importing libraries. So if you want to integrate to Firebase, we would do that over here in the HTML head. If we want to use fonts, we'd put it in the HTML head. So think of the head like the brain. It's really important. The only one thing that visually affects the page is title, right? But still, again, it's not within the browser. So you can see that we have title over here, right? And let me show you guys something. So now if I right click on index.html and then I open with live server, right? So just ensure that you have live server installed. So let me just quickly go through that. So you can see that on the left over here, we have all these different options. And you can see this block-like option looks like applications, right? You click on that and then you can just type live server and you should be able to download download what you're looking for, this live server. And with live server, the point of it is if you right click, right, and open with live server. So you can see it says server is started. And let me just go over here and drag it here. So you can see that the app gets loaded and it has this link. So the reason we use live server is because if we just save our file, it automatically reloads the page. Now, if you do not have live server, it's fine. What you can do is you can just open this like a normal file, and you can just click on, you can just refresh the page every time you want to see the updated changes, right? So to open it as a normal file, you just go into the folder, double click it, and it's going to open in the browser like this, okay? Great. So you can see that this is what our file looks like. We just spoke about the head tag. It's like the brain. It has all these meta tags, and it has this title option. And over here, if I just add, let's change this. Let's actually change this to what Netflix has. So you can see that Netflix has all this information. What I'll do is I'm going to right click, view page source. And I'm just looking for title right now. So you can see that's all the HTML code. So as I said, guys, like every website that you see, it all begins with HTML. So I'm just going to copy that title tag, title element, right? And I'm going to go back to my code. And I'm just going to paste that there. And then I'm going to save. Okay. So if now I saved it, right? If I go back to my browser, let me actually, let me put my browser and my code editor in the same place. And I'm just going to close that. You can see that now the title is the same, right? For our tab. So that's the only thing about the title. It just gives it it gives a name to your page, right? But again, it's not changing anything inside the body over here, right? Now let's go on and talk about the body, okay? Let me just move this slightly. Right, and I'll go back to the slides now. And you can see in the slides, we have body, which is the next component. So just to reiterate, we just spoke about all these different elements right now. We spoke about the doc type, HTML head, and then now we're going to be talking about the body, right? This is where all the HTML elements go. So if you want to add your headings, your paragraphs, your titles, whatever you want to add will go inside the body. And the browser is going to understand that you want to visually present these elements. So anything that's in the body is what's going to be presented visually, right? So that is the file structure, right? That is what the file looks like, and that is the file structure, okay? So now let us actually jump into talking a little bit about specific elements in HTML, right? So we can start off by talking about headings and paragraphs, okay? So headings basically denote hierarchy and page structure. What that means is that headings, like, it gives emphasis and says that this is like, you're about to talk about a section. So it's like similar to a book, it's a heading, right? When you have a heading, you'll have like paragraphs underneath, right? So that's the hierarchy. So you can have a heading, you can have a subtitle, you can have different kinds of headings, right? So there's 6 levels of headings. So there's H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6. H1 is the biggest, it's the heading, right? And there's only 6 levels. Please, like, you do not want to put H7, H8, and so on. The only difference is the size, right? But the browser understands H1 as like the main heading, H2 as like a subheading, H3 as a subheading, and so on, right? So there's only 6 levels. So I guess let us actually create our first HTML element together, right? So if I come to my Netflix page over here, you can see that we have these different options, right? And we have different sized fonts over here. So like you can see, we have untitled movies, TV shows, and more. And then we have watch anywhere, cancel anytime. And then we have this, right? So what I'll do now is I'm going to actually use what we just learned, the H tags, the H1, H2, and H3 tag. And I'm just going to put these elements inside that, okay? So I'm in my VS Code right now. Inside my body tag, body element, I'm just going to type H1, and I'm going to hit enter, right? So that's why Visual Studio Code is so powerful. It automatically created the opening tag and closing tag for me. And the cursor is directly in the middle there. So I have to just directly type what I want inside there. And I'm just going to paste what I just copied, right? So I've just put H1 here. Next, I'm going to put H2, right? So for H2, it says watch anywhere, cancel anytime. And I'm going to hit enter, type H2, right? Hit enter. And then in the middle of both the tags, I'm just going to paste what I want, right? So I've done H2. And then lastly, I'm going to do H3. So ready to watch, enter your email address. So I'm just going to use H3 for that, okay? And again, H3, enter, paste, and put it on one line. Now I just saved the file, right? So the shortcut is Control S, Command S, right? And if I open our page, you can see that we have our text, right? Obviously, it looks nothing like Netflix because we haven't got into styles yet, but you can see our elements are coming in here. The browser understands that we've put a heading, H1, we'll put H2, and we'll put H3. And accordingly, it has different sizes, right? So that's the heading, right? As you guys can see, it's really, really simple to get started. So heading, okay, that's the first element we just did, okay? Then the next one is paragraphs, okay? Now paragraphs are basically like, the regular text. So it's a whole bunch of information you want to put to explain something, right? But unlike headings, paragraphs only have the P tag. There's no P1, there's no P2, there's no P3. It's just P, right? Paragraph, okay? So let us see how we can do this with our Netflix app. So I'm just going to use this section over here. I'm going to call this H1, and I'm going to put this into a paragraph tag, okay? So I'm just going to, again, copy this. So you can see we're just adding all our elements. When we start learning CSS, we're going to start styling everything. So it's going to start looking more like Netflix. Now, again, I'm just going to use the H1 tag, hit enter, paste it, enjoy your TV. And then let's use the P tag for paragraph, right? And I'm just going to copy this and go over here, enter it in the middle of the two, hit save. And now you should see that everything appears. So that appears as a paragraph there, okay? Awesome. So we've just simple, like we've just done H1, H2, H3, and then we just did a paragraph, okay? Now, moving on. Yeah, guys, just again, like I had to take a slide to give a shout out to VS Code because VS Code is awesome. It closes tags for you, auto completes for you. You can download the live server extension. So Every time you hit save, it automatically updates the browser for you. You can comment codes, you can comment your code. So we'll be talking about commenting. And yeah, guys, I cannot emphasize, it is the most preferred code editor for developers. So I recommend that you use VS Code, right? It's awesome. I'm like a huge advocate for it. Okay, so let's talk a little more about a few more elements, right? So there's strong and there's emphasis, right? So there's strong. So I'm just looking at the chat real quick. Restarting VS Code did the job. Okay, so I guess everyone's helping one another. That's great, guys. Awesome stuff. Right, so let's talk about strong versus emphasis. Strong basically helps you write text as bold in your browser, right? So anytime you want to give like some importance to a text, you use the strong tag, okay? So let's actually try that out. So let's say, for example, over here, I want to make PlayStation bold, right? I have to just use the strong element. So I have PlayStation over here, and I just want to make the word PlayStation bold, right? So what I'll do is I'm going to use the open tag now, right? And then I'm going to type strong, and you see VS Code will automatically close the tag for me. But I just want the word PlayStation to be bold, right? I'm going to hit save. So what you can see is we are still in between our P tags, right? So within our P tag, we just added a strong element as well, right? So it's just something to note. It is an inline element, right? Meaning that you can add it within elements. You can add it within the P tag, P element, you can add it within the H1 element, and so on. So now if I just save the file and come back over here, you can see that PlayStation is now bold, right? And that's by using the strong tag. That's how you make it bold, right? Great. Let's go back to the slides. So yeah, strong is important. It tells the browser that there's really important text in this element. The next thing is EM, right? EM stands for emphasis, right? You don't want to type emphasis all the time, so it's just a shortcut, EM. And it helps you write italic text in the browser. So bold text is using strong, EM is using italic, right? So similar to what we did with strong, the strong opening tag, strong closing tag, and then whatever we want to make bold, we put in between there. Similar to that, it works the same way with EM, emphasis, right? So if I go back to the code, let's say we make, let's make Chromecast here italic, right? So I'm just going to use EM, and I'm just going to put Chromecast in between the EM tags. And I'm going to hit save. And if I come back to this, you can see that PlayStation is strong, Chromecast is EM, emphasis, right? So there's an emphasis on the EM, on the Chromecast text, okay? So that's basically strong versus emphasis. Just simply put, if you want to write text in bold, use the strong element. If you want to write text in italic, use EM, okay? Okay, so I'm seeing a couple of questions. How do I run the code? Or Joe, do you want to maybe just assist them, like to help run the code? But I think, let me just show you guys real quick. If you want to run the code, all you have to do is you find the file you want, and you just right click, and you open with live server, right? That helps you run the code so that every time you save your file, your browser automatically reloads.
Yeah, sorry. I think you should just go over the live server part again. Seems like for some of them it's disabled. So maybe if you go to extensions and show them how to enable it, because for our VS Code, for some reason it's enabled automatically.
Yeah. So what you have to do is, if you come to your live server, you can enable it by clicking on this, right? So if it's disabled, right, you probably have the option to enable it. So what you have to do is you just come to your extensions tab, type live server, it'll find it for you, and then you can just enable it over here, right? And if it doesn't immediately work, just close your VS Code and open it again, and it should work. Alternatively, guys, if that's stressing you a lot, what you can do is, let me just put this on my desktop. You don't have to worry too much about that. Oh, okay. Let me just open what I have right now, the Netflix DSC. what you can do is you can just open a new tab here in your browser, and you can just drag and drop index.html there, and it'll open for you, right? The only difference now is that what you have to do is you have to just refresh the page, right? So every time you save your file, it'll not automatically see the change. So you have to come back over here. So for example, if where is my code? Did I just close my code? Yep, I don't know how it got closed. Let me open it up. So to open it up, I just dragged it into VS Code. I just find that really convenient. Awesome. Great. And now, like, if I make a small change over here, if I say enjoy your TV, put an exclamation mark and hit save, right? And I come over here, you'll see that enjoy your TV still shows a full stop. So what you have to do, you have to just refresh the page, and then you can see your HTML comes up. So that's the only thing. It's like a live server just helps you automatically load the page, so you don't have to come and keep refreshing the page. But if you can't do it, it's totally fine. What you can do is you can try after this workshop, okay? So I'm just going to open this up in live server again, open with live server. Because for some reason, I think I closed VS Code by mistake. Cool.
So there's
So
a
what
question.
do we yeah?
It's asking what's the difference between strong and the B tag.
Great,
So
great question.
Yeah, it's technically it's the same thing, but in terms of SEO, when you want to put the website on Google, the strong tag basically emphasizes that it's an important text, whereas the bold tag is just for normal text. You just want to make it bold. That's the only difference.
Yeah, perfect. So James is asking, can you connect from another device to the live server if I open up a port on my machine? I don't think so, hey?
Local.
Unless it's a local host. I mean, like, yeah, maybe Harjot. I think it's possible, hey?
Perhaps we've never tried it.
Yeah, but guys, just keep it simple, guys. Let's focus on the concepts, all the technical stuff, you know. We can worry about that later. Let's just keep the focus on the concepts. Great. So yeah, just the pointer again on strong and EM. Strong is basically strong and EM are both inline elements. Inline elements means that it can be used within paragraphs. So you can see that within the paragraphs, we made Smart TV strong here. Chromecast was again italics, right? And that is within the P element. Okay, so that's all you have to know.
Okay, well, you can probably explain italicizing.
Sorry, Ali?
You can probably explain italicizing like the I tag.
Sorry, can you please repeat that?
If you want to explain how to italicize or underline text.
Text decoration.
Underline text. Normally we use CSS to underline text. I don't think there's an HTML element to underline text. So we would have to use a CSS for that. Right, Harjot? I don't think there's a HTML element.
Yeah, not something we're aware of, but we just use CSS.
Yeah, we'll probably dive into that when we do CSS. Cool. So yeah, so basically let's talk about the anchor tag now. So let's bring some dynamic aspects to the site. So you can see that anchor A is the short for anchor, right? And the point of anchor is to create links on your page. So when you click on the link, you want it to get redirected somewhere, right? So it's used to link to a different location on a current page or to another page. So I'm sure you guys have seen landing pages, right? And on landing pages, yeah, so to your question, there's Christina just gave an answer, text decoration underline. That basically underlines the text for you, right? Cool. So let's just talk about the A tag. It does two things. I'm sure you've seen landing pages where if you click on an item, it like kind of scrolls down and then it stops at a place, right? So they're actually using the A tag over there. And the A tag, you know, it moves to a different location on the current page. Alternatively, if you click on the element, it can open a new page or it can open it in a new tab, okay? So that's what the anchor tag is for, right? So this is an example. So you can see that we have a tag, a opening tag here, a closing tag, and then we have the text sign in. So when we click on sign in, we need to link it to something, right? But then if you look at this sign in option over here, how will the browser know where to redirect when this element is clicked on? So I mean, just to explain that, right? If we come back over here, and actually let's look at what element we can use. We can use sign in, I guess, sign in. So you can see we have a header over here, and we can use sign in as the a tag, and then we can style it to look like a button. We'll do that. So above the h1 tag, I'm just going to create an a tag, right? So I'll do this manually, and I'm just going to call this sign in, right? I'm going to hit save now. So you'll see that the text appears, right? But it's not doing what we want. Like when we click on it, we want it to go somewhere, you know, to open up a new page, right? Like Netflix, when I click on sign in, it opens in the same page, it opens this login page, right? For sign in. And we want the exact same thing happening, right? So how will the browser know where we want to redirect the element, right? So that's where a concept called attributes comes in, okay? So attributes are always given within the opening tag, and the purpose of the attributes is to give extra information. So for example, with the anchor element, it tells where you want to redirect a certain element, right? So if you click on sign in, you want it to redirect to, for example, the login page, right? And that extra information can be provided to the browser through that attribute, okay? And this is how it's written. So you can see we have the anchor opening angle bracket, the a tag, and then we have just closed the angle bracket over here. We've closed the opening tag over there. And you can see we've used this href attribute followed with an equal sign, right? And then there's an opening quote and a closing quote. And then we add the link where we want it to redirect to, right? So basically, this is called attribute, and this attribute provides additional information to the browser so that it knows what to do with the element, okay? So if I come over here into the code, and I'm just going to remove this element, and I'm just going to hit A and enter, you can see that VS Code automatically provides href for me, right? And with href, what I have to do is I have to just drop the link there. So I'm just going to click on sign in, but I'll open it in a new tab. I just want to copy that link, close it. And back to my code editor now. I am inside my HA element. In the A opening tag, I'm inside my href attribute, right? And I'm just going to paste it there. And I'm going to hit, firstly, I'm going to add some text, so sign in. And what I want this to do is when I click on sign in, I want it to open this Netflix page, right? So if I save that and go back to our page over here, you'll see it's loading. You can see that it has an underline right now. And for you guys, it's probably going to be blue, light blue, right? And if you click on it, now if I click on it, it's going to redirect to the Netflix login page. So that's basically what the A tag does. It opens it it redirects to a certain page, right? So you can see that our app has some functionality now. So if we click on sign in, it actually opens it in a new page, right? Great. So yeah, I think more on attributes, right? So some elements, such as the anchor element, require attributes. So if we use the anchor element without the href attribute, it's not going to work. Like it's not going to do what you want. Like if you click on it, it's not going to, the A tag is not going to do its job, right? So that it's extremely important to know exactly what attributes are required for elements, right? So the href attribute requires, the anchor element requires the href attribute, okay? And another pointer, if you do not use HTTP or HTTPS, right, it's not going to know where to redirect it. So if you just do www.netflix.com, it's not going to work, right? You'll be surprised it won't work. And if you open browsers, like if I open Netflix over here, you can see that it doesn't show us www. And if I copy that and go to my code editor, and I'm just going to paste it up here, paste it, you can see that it automatically grabs the HTTPS and the ://, right? And it's extremely important that the href uses the HTTPS, right? This is known as the absolute path. So absolute path means that you want it to go exactly there, right? So yeah, this is again just HTTPS is extremely important. Otherwise, your link is not going to work as you expect, right? Now, another example is like absolute path, we can specify, like absolute path, we can specify the external link. We can also point to files in our project, right? So for example, if I wanna open like a new page, an about us page or a profile page, I would have to use a relative path, right? And I would have a separate HTML file that has all the code for an about us page. And if I click on that, it'll open the about us page, right? So that is known as relative path, right? So let's talk a little more about that. So the point of relative path is to point to files locally in your project, okay? So for example, you have href about us.html about us, right? So let's do an example, right? So at the bottom over here, assuming that we have like some kind of footer, right? I'm just going to add an A tag. And I mean, before I add the A tag, let's actually create another file. So I'm going to create a new file and I'm going to call this about us.html. And again, inside about us, I'm just going to use the exclamation sign, hit enter, and then it's going to create this for me. And I'm just going to say Netflix about us. And then I'm just going to add a heading element over here to show that we are on the about us page, right? And then I'm going to save that. And if I come back here, assuming that that's our footer, like our imaginary footer, I'm going to type A, hit enter. And now, instead of using an absolute path like we used up here, I'm going to use the relative path because I want to point to a file that is in my project and my project locally, right? So in order to do that, I have to do, I could just type about us.html, right? And you can see VS Code is understanding that, hey, are you referring to this file that you already have in your project? And I can hit enter and I can confirm that that is the link, right? So if I click on this about us, if I click on this about us element, right, it should open the about us page, right? Now, sometimes you'll see a /, right? And that basically is the same thing, okay? So / about us.html is the same thing as doing just about us.html, okay? So I prefer to just put it like this because normally VS Code is extremely quick. When you do /, it loads all the files I'm looking for. So this is generally how I prefer to do it. Now, if I go back to our site and go to our footer, you can see that we have about us over here. And if I click on it, you can see that it opened our about us page. So that is how, like, routing works, like, within your project, right? We just point it to a local file using a relative path. So don't worry too much about the jargon. Like, just know that if you want to point to like a specific page that already has an HTTPS link, you can do that. If you want to point to a file that is in your project, you can use the relative path. So using the /, and then VS Code is going to help you locate that file, right? So if you use dot, it means you're pointing to the current folder. If you use // so if I do // it's going to look at the folder above, and that's basically how this works. I think we will dive into it perhaps, maybe in a little more advanced workshop, maybe in future. Because yeah, it's extremely important when you work with frameworks and stuff. You'll have a whole lot of files, and the routing is extremely important. So yeah, this just has a little more information on like the relative path. You guys can refer to the recording after to get more information on that. Yeah, so this is another example, the image tag, which we'll get to, right? Yeah, so just a little more on the anchor tag, right? Yeah, so James, exactly like your question was right on time. With this attribute target, you can choose where you want to open the link. So if you want to open it in a new tab, what you do is, I'm back in my code now, and let's say for my sign in, I want this to open up in a new tab. I use the target attribute. So now I'm going to type target. You can see that VS Code understands what I'm trying to do. I hit enter, and then it's produced the codes for me. And I just want to point this. I want this to open in a new tab. So if I use target _ blank, it'll open it in a new tab for me. So I'm just waiting to reload. And now if I click on it, you can see it open in a new tab. So that's basically how you would open elements in new tabs. Okay. I'm just going to leave that like that for now. And yeah, that's basically the anchor element, right? Now let's move on to the image tag, the image element, right? So similar to the A element, right, to the anchor element, the image element works quite similarly, right? So the A element requires an attribute href. Similarly, images use the source attribute, right? It does the same thing. Href tells exactly where you want to point your when the link is clicked on, where you want to point it to, whereas the source attribute tells you what image you want to point it to. So it does the exact same thing, it's just different attributes. So href is to point to specific elements, specific pages. Source does the exact same thing, but image understands source, doesn't understand href, okay? So source attribute, which is short for source, and it's also self-closing. So we saw this question earlier. So you can see that we do not have a closing tag. And the reason we do not have a closing tag is because we don't have anything to add in between the opening and closing tag. So it's self-closing. So it just has attributes. An image will never have anything between. It will just have attributes. So you do not need a closing tag for it. So it's known as self-closing, okay? So let's actually import our first image into our project. So I'm just going to above our A tag. So I'll kind of separate this out. So this is like kind of like our header, imagined like our header. And I'm just going to use the img, right? So I'll type img, stands for image, hit enter. And then you can see that we have two options here. We have source, and we have the src attribute, and we have the alt attribute. And what I'll do is I want this to point to the logo, the Netflix logo, and it's called logo.png over here, right? So similar to what we did down here, I'm just going to use the relative path. So dot slash, I want it to go inside assets, and I want it to look for a logo, and then hit save. So now if we go back to our page, you can see that our landing page now has the Netflix logo that has come in, right? So that's basically how you import images. Okay, awesome. So file paths can be relative or similar to the A tag. Like if you want to point to like an absolute path, that's also possible. If you want to point to an image online, you can also use the image tag for that, okay? So it works exactly like the A tag. The only difference is that we're using the source attribute and it's self-closing. Great. So moving on, there's the alt attribute. So you can see that we had the alt attribute over here. And alt is nothing but description. It gives the image a description. So there's some people with disabilities, some people who cannot see, right? And if they access the site, there are readers that read out exactly what elements are on the page. So that's where the alt really helps, right? So we can say Netflix logo, right? So if someone blind is trying to access the site and they're using some sort of reader, it's going to say that here's like there's a Netflix logo over here. So that's how it helps. So Harjot, maybe like you want to add in over here, it also helps with search engine optimization somehow.
Yeah, so what the alt does is basically when Google opens up the web browser, right? Well, the web page, it actually can't read the image. Like, how will a browser read an image? It needs to read some text, and that's what the alt does. So when Google reads alt, it basically identifies what the image is, and it provides better search results in the browser. So I think, yeah, that's what alt is used for in terms of SEO. So just make sure that you have the LT tag always on for images.
Yeah. So, I mean, for those of you who are wondering what SEO is basically search engine optimization, right? Search engine optimization means that you want your website to appear, like when you type anything on Google, let's say you type like coding classes on Google. If we want Zayo to appear higher in the rankings, we would have to use A tags, alt tags over here in our app so that the browser, like so that Google ranks us higher, right, in the search results. Awesome. Great. So we just spoke about the alt attribute. It's used to describe an image, basically. Okay. So just to summarize, image element, very similar to the anchor element, and it requires an attribute to work. It has a required attribute of source, whereas image uses href, and the image tag is actually self-closing. Okay. Now let's move on to lists. I think this is the last part before we jump into some CSS, and then we'll probably come back to HTML to cover a few more things. So lists, right? So if I actually go to our Netflix page here and I disable all the styles, you can see that Netflix also uses an anchor tag for sign in. So we are on the right track. And if I scroll down to the footer, you can see that we have a whole bunch of, we have a list over here, right, in the footer, okay? And that's where lists come in. Now, lists are extremely helpful when you want to, like, put items in order, in a certain order. So you can have a regular bulleted list, or you can have a numbered list. And they're normally very helpful for navigation. So you can see Netflix uses lists for their footer navigation. So if you click on elements in the footer, it'll open it in a new tab and stuff, right? And the lists are also used for organizing other content. So for example, sometimes I'm not sure, I don't think Instagram does it, but some pages you can also use lists to like align elements vertically. So you can style the lists to remove the bullet points, and you can have lists load one on top, items load one on top of the other for organizing content. So you can use lists for that as well, right? But we normally don't do that. So we'll dive into exactly how we would actually structure elements, whether we use YouTube, whether we build YouTube or Facebook. And there's two types of lists. There's the ordered lists, unordered list, right? So as the name suggests, ordered list means that it's going to have numbers, right? It's going to be numbered. So number 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Whereas unordered list is just going to have bullet points. And then inside each list, you have list items, LI, right? And the LI basically is those specific items, right? So let's actually do this. Let's actually create our footer, right? So what I'll do is over here, kind of like in our footer. So I'm just going to comment this because I don't think we'll actually use that. So if you're worried about this, okay, I'm just going to leave that like that for now. We'll cover that in a bit. So I'm going to use UL, unordered list. So you can see that Netflix is using an unordered list. And then inside that, you can have list items, right? And the first list item is FAQ. So if I hit save and we go to our page, just waiting for it to load, you can see that we have FAQ over here, right? So similarly, what I'll do now is I'm just going to copy paste all these elements. And I'll show you guys a nice trick with VS Code. You can see that these are all the list items, right? What I'll do now is I'm holding the Alt icon. So I'm holding the Alt button on my keyboard, and then I'm just going to click exactly where I want the cursors to appear. So I can have multiple cursors, right? So you can, oops. Sorry about that, guys. So you can have multiple cursors, and this is just going to speed up how we create this list. Nice trick. So you have to just click exactly where you want the cursors to appear. Right, and then you can just type one thing across all the places. You can highlight everything like that, and then hit save. So you can see that we have multiple cursors, can trip people up, and then you hit escape, and then you can see, if we go back to our app, to our Netflix app, you can see that we have this. So don't worry about the underlying stuff. We'll actually style that in a bit. Cool. So I'm just going to enable styles again because Netflix looks horrible without the styles. And yeah, that's pretty much it with lists. Okay, so just one last thing, commenting your code, extremely important. Yeah, Aileen basically comments isn't // it's actually using this open tag, exclamation point, dash dash, and then dash dash closing tag. So honestly speaking, I never remember this commenting structure because I just use VS Code to help me with that. So if I comment out the A tag over here, because we're not really going to use it, if you go to your keyboard and you type, it's a shortcut command /. I think you can use control / if you have Windows, right? So control / command /. Yeah, Aileen, I know the multiple cursors thing was game changing for me as well. It was really, really cool. Like VS Code has so many nifty tricks. I'm sure you guys will come across more tricks, you know? So yeah, that's how you can comment your code. And also one of the most important things about commenting is it helps, like if you're working with other developers, it helps them understand the code you're writing. So for example, over here, if I want to add a comment, so I'm going to do, again, control slash or command slash. I'm going to say that this is our header, right? And then I'm going to add another comment over here, command slash, should I call this banner? So this is the banner where we'll put all our, like the centered elements. And then here, command slash footer, right? So that's basically how you can comment your code. These things, when you comment code, it doesn't appear in the browser. It's just to help you when you're programming and help developers that you're collaborating with, okay? Great, so that brings us to the end for HTML. And just to sum things up, guys, use VS Code, right? VS Code is extremely powerful. Heading, you have 6 options, H1 to H6. And then paragraph, you have the P tag to write paragraph content. If you want to write text in bold, use strong. You can use B, but I prefer use strong so that the browser understands it has semantic meaning to it. You know, it understands that it's strong, so there's a strong emphasis on it. Whereas italic uses emphasis, EM, right? Anchor basically uses, it points to external pages, or it points to a different point, different part of the same page. And then some elements require attributes. Attributes are used using, you know, the name of the attribute followed with an equal sign, and then opening quotation and closing quotation. And that's how you create attributes. Some elements require attributes. For example, the anchor element requires the href attribute. And the job of the attribute is to just give more information and say that when I click on sign in, I want it to point to this location, okay? And there's 2 things to note when you're using href or source, SRC, absolute paths and relative paths. Absolute paths are the exact links where you want it to get pointed to, whereas relative paths are to point to different files in your same project. And then the image element is self-closing. The job of the image element is to get an image to appear on your page, right? And it's very similar to the A element, but the only difference is that you're using a source attribute, right? And it's self-closing, okay? So the image also has an alt attribute for descriptions. And then to comment your code, just use control slash if you're using VS Code. If not, you can learn this open. I mean, I'm sure other editors also have some sort of shortcut to comment. So you can use the opening angle brackets, exclamation point, dash, dash, and then the HTML element. And then at the end, dash, dash, closing element. Great, so that brings us to the end of this HTML portion. We'll be covering a whole lot more of it. Like next week is going to be diving more into like building the Netflix page, but I hope these are the concepts that are enough to get you guys started with HTML. So as you can see, it's really basic, really easy to get started. So do we have any questions so far?
Akhil, I see Redman Vicoli is struggling with the dot slash. So I think the problem might be that the index.html file is inside assets or it's not together. Something's wrong with that. Could you just show the structure? Maybe open up your Finder and show this folder in Finder. How exactly? Okay.
So this is the app, you know, in the folder Netflix DSC, and you can see that I have the index.html, assets, and about us, right? So they're all in the same level. Same level means that it's not inside a subfolder. So it's in the root. So this is the root, right? Now, if you're having problems with the relative path, let's do an example, right? So for example, I'm going to create a new folder here, and I'm going to call this about us as well. Oh, oops. About us. And I'm just going to put the about us index, about us HTML file inside about us, right? So now if I go back here, you can see that now I don't have the about us.html file in the root. The about us.html is inside a subfolder, okay? So now if I come back to my code and I uncomment this, so to uncomment, same thing, control slash or command slash, and I hit save, you can see that if I go back to the browser, you can see that this is what it looks like. If I click on about us, it's not going to work, right? It says that it cannot get about us.html. That means the browser doesn't understand what we're pointing to, right? So if we want to point to the right place, what you have to do is you have to do, so first I'm just going to remove all this stuff, because now the location of about us has changed, right? So if I do /, it'll tell me exactly what folders are in my root. And I can see about us is there. And inside about us, I have about us.html, right? If I hit save now, go back to our page and then click on about us. Now it opened it up and it works, right? So I hope that gives you guys clarity on the relative paths. It can get a bit confusing, but if you use /, I think it makes things a whole lot easier because of VS Code. Great, awesome. This is great stuff, guys. Yeah. So I think we can, Harjot, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, I was on mute. So I was saying that I think we've been answering all the questions on the go.
Yeah.
If any questions, you can just pop it on chat and we'll answer it. Cool. Break time.
Yeah.
Marcus, do you want to speak the code?
So guys, what I'll do now is, I mean, like, yeah, we can have like a small 2-minute break and then we can jump into some CSS. So basically, yeah, before I get into the break, what I'll do is I'm just going to push my code so that Harjot can access it. So we're using something called Git. Git helps developers to collaborate. So if I do git status, like, don't worry about this, guys. You don't have to worry about this right now. We will try to cover it in the next workshop if time allows. So I'm just going to add the files and then I'm going to commit. And then I'm just going to do git push. And Harjot should be able to access the files on his side.
And everyone else can also access the files. So
yeah,
if you're going along, you've missed something, you can download Apple's code directly from GitHub.
Yeah, so if I think I had GitHub open somewhere. Yeah, if I come over here and I refresh this page, you see assets and stuff doesn't, I mean, like index.html doesn't appear. And now all the files appear. So if you come back and download the code again, you'll see the updated version. Great.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Cool.
so Harjot, do you want to take the break or?
30 seconds.
Okay, great. So yeah, guys, let's take a moment to talk about something, right? So we're just going to take a small break. And yeah, in the chat, we want to hear some of you guys' crazy celebrity encounters. You know, I'm sure, like, you know, some people have had some interactions with celebs, or, you know, if not a direct interaction, you know, some sort of like experience. You know, we'd love to hear that. I think let me go first, right? I have a really funny one. So I was actually going to South Africa, and you know how, like, when you're going to econ class, you're passing through business class, and in the business class, I saw a guy, and I was like, man, I've seen this guy somewhere. And I just saw him, and I was like, there was a queue, so I was even standing there waiting for a while, and I was looking at him. I was like, man, I've seen this guy somewhere, you know. And then I went, and you know, later on, like a couple of days later, I was watching a movie, and I saw him, and I was like, oh my gosh, this guy's a celebrity, and now he's become so famous. And I feel like I missed an opportunity to, like, you know, take a picture or something, you know. So yeah, that's my funny, crazy celebrity encounter. Like, not really a direct encounter, but, you know, it is an experience. We'd love to hear some encounters from you guys, your experiences. Drop it in the chat, guys. Harjot, any experience you want to share? Any of the DSC leads?
Dude, remember when Dale stayed when hiking?
Oh yeah.
Dude, like, we're hiking at Lion's Head in one of the hills in Cape Town, and we saw a cricketer. His name is Dale. He's the fast bowler in the South African team, and he's just casually running uphill and with his dog, and people were like, they didn't even notice because they never knew it was Dale Steyn. And we just figured out for some reason, you know, and we started jumping around, and people were like, yo, who exactly is that first?
Yeah, and we immediately, like, you know, we took pictures with him. It was so kind, like, you know, he took pictures with us. And I haven't shared it on my Instagram. Like, I put a story up, and I think he liked it or something. And I was like, oh my God, I got direct interaction with Dale Steyn, which was really sick. Yeah. Great. Harjot, I think we should continue.
Yep, we can.
I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, so Harjot can take over. We'll be jumping into CSS now.
Awesome. Let me set this up quickly. Can't find my Zoom. Okay, found it. Okay. So we're going to be starting with CSS basics right now. So we've done HTML, we've built the structure, the backbone of the website, and now let's get into more interesting stuff. You know, CSS is like more fun. You can actually see visually what exactly is happening. You can add colors to it. So we'll be going through CSS, the basic syntax. We'll also go through how to connect CSS with HTML. And yeah, I think that we only have about 6 more minutes. So I'll just go through the syntax and then we can take over from the next workshop. So the basic syntax. So a CSS basically has, the first thing is called a selector. It has a selector which basically identifies the HTML elements that you want to style. So if you want to change the color of H1 tag that Akhil spoke about, you can type in H1 and it's called a selector in CSS. And then we have a curly bracket that is used to start the CSS declaration, the styling, the real styling of it. And inside the curly bracket, that's where the styling will be placed. So the styling actually contains the first, it's called a property. The first thing is a property, and then you can actually mention any value for that property. And that's how you declare a CSS variable. Yeah. Cool. So how do we connect CSS into HTML? There are actually 3 ways that we do it. The first one is inline CSS, the second one is internal CSS, and then external CSS. And how internal CSS works is you directly add the styling into the HTML element, and you use the style tag to add that CSS. So I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm just going to open VS Code. I just pulled Akhil's code, so I have Akhil's code on my local repository. So I'm going to use live, so open it up with that. So we only use, where's it gone? Just going to quickly find it. A live server didn't open up. Just a minute. Still figuring out. I think I'm just going to open it directly. Yeah, and so inline CSS is basically used when you want to style an individual element, but that's not good practice. Imagine like you have a whole lot of code all over the place and you want to style a specific tag, you add more code into the same HTML page. It gets so messy very quickly, especially like with the modern websites, which contain massive like code and so files. It's not good practice to use inline styling, but however, I'll still show you how exactly to do that. Sometimes you just want to add a small styling to test, and this is the easiest way. So I'm gonna change the color of unlimited movies, TV shows, and more H1 tag to blue. So I'll use the style tag over here and use the attribute called color. So color will basically change the color of the H1 tag. The over 100 attributes, properties, CSS properties. We'll probably go through a few of them as we code, but you just get the hang of it. The more CSS you use, you can use Google. You just type in what styling you want to use, just Google that, and you'll figure out what CSS property exactly does that. So I'm going to use color and change that to blue. And when I save this file, I have to refresh because my live server didn't work. And as you can see, the H1 tag changed to blue. Now let's go back to, okay, I've lost my file again. Just a minute. Akhil, do you know what the file is called? I think I closed it.
Yeah, it's called HTML. Just type HTML in your browser.
Tutorial.
No. Wait, are you looking for the slides?
Slides, yeah. I've lost the slides.
Okay, just give me a sec. It's called hashtag, I think. Just give me a sec. It's loading. So yeah, hashtag 1 HTML and CSS. Just type that, hashtag 1. There we go.
For some reason, my live server closed the browser. That was weird. Oh. Yeah, so we were talking about inline CSS. The second thing is the internal CSS. So internal CSS allows us to add CSS code directly into the HTML page inside the header section. So use the style element and you add it into the head section, and you only use this when you only have a single HTML page, which is quite rare these days. And it's again not a good practice to use this. So I'll show you how exactly to add CSS code into this. So inside the header, you'll have a style tag, style element, HTML element, and then you can call the selector, and I'm gonna change the color of H2, all the H2s in the document to red. So I'll use the selector H2 and then add the styling. So I'll open a curly bracket and add the property inside called color. And inside color, I'll just change that to red. So a cool thing about CSS is it already has default colors. So you can literally type red, purple, blue, black, and it will identify which color, which exact color you're looking for. Otherwise, you can use other ways of defining color like hex, is it called hex? And you can just basically add it right over here. So if you want to change it to white or black, you can just define it here. We're just gonna stick to red, and let's see if this works.
Yeah, we'll cover that in the next one.
Yeah.
Using pixel codes. Yeah.
Cool. So as you can see, H2 now has the red color. So that's how you basically define an internal CSS. Now the most exciting part, the external CSS. This is my favorite. This is what almost everybody uses. It allows you to link an external style sheet file to the HTML. And all that CSS that we write in the HTML can be placed in that file. So it makes the code look so clean. You don't have to add any CSS files or CSS code into the HTML file. All you have to do is link it. And how we do this is we use the link element in HTML inside the header and link it using a style sheet reference, and you call the file styles or CSS. You can call it anything you want. So it has to end with .css. So I'll create a new file called styles.css right in the Netflix folder. And I will link that with the index.html file. So I'll use the link attribute, so link elements. I can just type link and VS Code will complete everything else for me. And how Akil defined the path, I'm just going to do / and I can find the style.css file. To make sure that it's working, what I'll do is I'll change the background of the entire body to black. Let's try that. So I'll call the body attribute and change the color background to background. So background is basically one of the properties. And the cool thing about VS Code is as you start typing, you can identify the various properties that CSS has. So if you want to use color, so as you can see, CSS has like over hundreds and hundreds of properties. It's like very difficult to memorize everything, but with time you get used to it with the common ones, and you can use that to basically style your CSS. I know we're running out of time, so I'm just gonna finish this up. Background color, I'm gonna set it to black, just to make sure we're done with connecting.
Dude, why don't you set the color, use the color attribute and set the color to white so that we can see all the text.
Yeah, cool. So color and color change, I'll change everything to white. And everything changes. This is basically dark mode, honestly.
Yeah, guys, so I think, Arjun, let's end it over here and we can carry on in the next one.
So we did have a lot more planned for today, but I think time is up for us, and we'll just end it off here. We just covered, let me summarize, we just covered the basic syntax of CSS and how exactly you connect CSS to HTML, and that will get you started to styling the CSS, to styling the HTML page. Yeah, cool.
So I guess the next workshop will be a whole lot more focused on getting into the elements and like styling all the elements and getting a version of the Netflix app working. So that should be a lot of fun next time.
Yeah. So we'll be going through like HTML, CSS concepts. We'll just go more in depth. We'll also try cover Gits if time allows.
And we could probably cover it in the third workshop, maybe while we're doing an actual clone, YouTube or something. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be cool. And then we also want to deploy our website to the web using Netlify. That's the best part. You can now share it with your friends and family of what you built.
Yeah.
All right, guys. And that is us. You can follow us on Instagram if you have any questions. We'll reply really quickly. We check almost every day. And yeah, Akhil, do you want to take over?
Yeah, so what I'll do now is I'm just going to drop a link for some feedback, guys. Like, we love feedback, like, whether the good, bad, and ugly, we'll take it. Like, it really helps us, improve the quality of our workshops, how we're delivering, because at the end of the day, we want to just bring value to you guys. So yeah, I'm just going to drop something in the chat right now. So if that apply.zio.io/events, on that card, there's like a yellow thing. So Harjot, maybe you want to show that? Apply.zio, and where you guys can give us some feedback. Awesome. So is there any way we can download your slides? Unfortunately, Lindsay, like, we cannot do that. We cannot give you access to the slides. But you can definitely check out YouTube, and then you can look at the recordings and stuff. Yeah, it's just like, we really can't share the material, but you can access it via the video. So hopefully that answers the question. Yeah, thank you so much, Kevin. Thank you so much, Shane. We really appreciate it. We'll be diving, like, next week is going to be, so please be on time next week. We're going to hit the ground running next week. We're going to cover a whole lot, and we're going to build a version of the Netflix landing page. So that should be a lot of fun. Awesome. And also, guys, just one more small thing. Harjot, just open that slide once.
Cool.
So, like, guys, if you're interested in what Zio does, just feel free to check us out. We're actually currently running a training program, and it's actually open not only to people in SA, but to people all over the world. So if this is something that you would be interested in, please feel free to check the program out. These are the two programs that we have open right now: the basic web development, and then the web development plus. With web development, we'll build 30 plus projects. With 30 plus projects in your portfolio, there's no way you cannot get a job. And then the second one is web dev plus, where we'll do interview prep. We'll get you guys an opportunity to build your own business with the support of Zio instructors. And then lastly, we'll also get a guaranteed internship placement. So that's in web dev plus. So yeah, guys, this is some of the stuff we're doing. And also, all financial aid is available for everything. And if you apply with this particular code, you'll get a $200 discount. So if this is something that you'd be interested in, it's part-time. If you're studying, you want to develop this skill, it's worth the investment. You definitely earn a whole lot as a web developer freelancer. Trust me, like, we've done a lot of projects. It's good money. And yeah, just that's it. And also connect with us on Instagram, guys. Come on. Like, I promise to follow back. Like, I'm not the guy who's going to be like, hey, I'm not going to follow back. So I'll follow back, and we can always keep in touch if you guys ever have any questions. So Harjot, what I think, just push your code to GitHub, and I think everyone will be able to access the latest version of the code that we'll pick up from in the coming week. Great. So yeah, thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. I know we're a little past time, but yeah, thank you so much for hanging in there. And yeah, this has been fun, and next week should be a whole lot more fun. So Shane, awesome. The internship will not be with Zio. The internship will basically be at one of our partner companies in South Africa. So you'll be working with, like, established companies who have tech that is live in production, and you'll be pushing code to production. So that kind of internship is what we're aiming for. Yeah. So Luke, unfortunately, JavaScript is a little out of scope for these workshops, because it is a whole lot to cover in JavaScript, especially if you're a total beginner who's never programmed before. So unfortunately, we will not do JavaScript. Maybe we could have a separate series for JavaScript. Ask your DSC leads, and let us know. Yeah. Any other questions, guys? We're still hanging around here, like, for the next 10, 15 minutes, DSC leads, thank you so much. You guys have been great as well. Hopefully next week we'll cover a whole lot more. And yeah, DSC leads, please also just fill in the feedback. You guys were here all throughout. We'd love to hear any feedback to help us improve the quality of our workshops. So yeah, definitely check that out. Welcome, Luke. Awesome. So Rajat, let's just hang around like for another 5 minutes. So in case anyone has any questions, you can feel free to ask us. But yeah, guys, you're happy to leave. I mean, like you're free to leave right now if you have anything else.
Oh, good, man.
It's crazy here. Like the power of CSS is just freaking crazy. So Aileen is asking how much is the 3-month class. So the 3-month class is the $2,800 upfront. If it's monthly, it's $999 per month. But if you do apply with that code, you get a $200 discount, and we do have financial aid. Like we have a whole lot of sponsors that we're working with, so we can cover a whole up to 30% of the cost of tuition. So definitely, like if this is something interests you guys, we'd love to work with you guys. Like it's very personalized. We'll be there to support you guys through everything. Because one of the hardest things with programming, like entering the world of programming, is dealing with bugs. When you're stuck with errors, you do need support sometimes. And I think that's something that we place a lot of emphasis on.
The best part is part-time. So if you're in university, it's an extra skill you can add on after you're done with your university work.
Yeah.
I mean, we learned when we were in varsity. Like, yeah, we just graduated last year. I mean,
Yeah.
it was so beneficial. Like as soon as we graduated, we had like projects on our plates. We didn't have to work. We start our business. So it was, yeah. I think I'm glad that we did like web development when we were in university.
Yeah, it's really fun, guys. So Alien, it is $2,800 upfront. Yeah. No stress, no stress.
Cool.
Cool. I think one of the coolest things about web dev is you get to see the changes you make. Sometimes like if you're building like if you're doing some machine learning stuff with Python, it's the visual changes are not that attractive. But like if you're doing web dev, you can literally see that this is something that people are going to use. So it's really like that's one of the things that attracted me a lot to like I have played around with machine learning and stuff as well, but that's one of the things that attracted me a lot to web dev. So a question from Shane in Visual Studio. What do you think is the best version for LaTeX? So I'm not sure if you can write LaTeX in VS Code. So I'm actually not quite sure about that. Yeah.
I mean, VS Studio has so many extensions, so surely there should be something.
I'm sure there's something you can do with it. Yeah, like 100%. I'm sure you can write LaTeX. Like recently, we were trying to open a CSV file, and we just used VS Code for that. And VS Code it's so convenient to open CSV files as well. If you're struggling to open it in Excel. Any feedback, guys, from the DSC leads right now? I know we are live, but happy to hear any feedback from you guys on how this workshop went.
Oh, it was great. I'm really excited for the next week. Yeah.
Yeah, echoing the same sentiments. It was absolutely amazing having you guys teach this and making it fun and engaging. And at the very beginner level, it was amazing. So thank you so much for your time.
100%, guys. It's a pleasure. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It was pretty exciting to watch the workshop. We were really enthusiastic.
Yeah, I mean that's just how we roll. Our energy is just something else. So Aileen, basically if you go to apply.zio.io/events, there's like an orange button on that first card, and it can give us the feedback there by clicking on it. I could actually just drop the survey over here in the chat actually.
So there's this button down here. Says please give us feedback. Go for it.
Cool.
Okay, guys, awesome.
See you guys next week. Cheers.
Guys.